I need to share something with you today, something that has been weighing on my spirit for weeks, something that forced me to confront the most uncomfortable truths of our faith. It began a month ago, at a gala event in Dallas. I was there representing The Chosen, and it was a beautiful night, a charity event for a noble cause. The room was filled with good, successful people in expensive clothes, celebrating the good we were all doing. There was a palpable sense of blessing in the air, a feeling that we were on the right side of history, doing God's work. And I felt grateful for that success. But as the night ended and my car pulled away from the luxury hotel, we stopped at a red light. And there, under the cold, pale glow of a streetlight, less than 100 feet from the opulence I had just left, I saw a man. He was huddled on a corner of the sidewalk, trying to shield himself from the wind with a piece of cardboard. He was old, his bones looked sharp beneath his skin, and his eyes held a hollowness that seemed to have swallowed all hope. In that instant, the contrast between those two worlds struck me like a physical assault. Here I was, in a comfortable car, full from an expensive meal, wearing a suit that cost more than that man would see in a year, on my way to a warm bed. And he was just there. The distance between us was only a few yards of pavement, but it was an abyss of universes. I felt like a hypocrite. How could I play Jesus, the man who had no place to lay his head, and live a life so insulated from the suffering he embraced? A deep spiritual confusion set in. The question that formed wasn't one of guilt, but of a terrifying cognitive dissonance. What did this wealth, this success that surrounded my work, truly mean in the eyes of God? That question haunted me. For days, it was the first thing on my mind when I woke up and the last as I tried to sleep. The joy of my work felt tainted by this persistent doubt. Finally, one sleepless night, around 3 a.m., I got up and went into a dark room in my home, knelt, and I didn't pray a polite prayer. It was a cry, a desperate plea for clarity. Lord Jesus, I whispered into the dark, the words catching in my throat, I don't understand. I speak your words, I wear your sandals, I try to honor your name. But my life is so comfortable. This success you've given me, is it a blessing I am meant to steward, or is it a curse? Is it a sign of your favor, or is it a beautiful, heavy, golden chain that is silently dragging me away from you? I need to know the truth. I can't keep pretending I understand when my heart is this confused. I expected a feeling of peace, maybe a scripture to come to mind. Instead, the presence of Jesus filled the room, not with comfort, but with the solemnity of a teacher about to give a difficult lesson. And instead of an answer, he gave me a vision. The first vision was to answer my question about wealth. I saw a man, not in a mansion, but in what I can only describe as a golden cage. He was surrounded by every imaginable comfort, art, technology, luxury. But he was frantic, pacing back and forth with an anxiety that was palpable, his hands clenching and unclenching, his face pale with dread. He was completely, terribly alone. I asked, Lord, why is he so afraid? He has everything. And Jesus spoke to my spirit, this man was faithful in many earthly things. He tithed. He gave to charity. He built a name for himself, believing his wealth was the proof of my blessing upon him. And then, Jesus showed me the shock. He showed me what the cage was made of. Each thick, heavy golden bar was not a sin he had committed, but a radical, generous opportunity he had refused. One bar was the time he bought a new car instead of paying off a friend's medical debt. Another bar was the money he'd hoarded in an account, afraid of losing it, instead of funding an orphanage. The cage was not built by God as a punishment, it was built by the man himself, with the blessings he refused to let flow. He became the jailer of his own wealth, and in eternity, he simply woke up inside the prison he had spent his entire life building. The vision of the man in his golden cage faded, leaving me shaken. I had just witnessed the most subtle of damnations. And then, Jesus gave me the first truth, the shock for the rich. He explained, wealth is not a reward, it is a magnifying glass. I do not give it as a prize for good behavior, I allow it as the most difficult test of all. Wealth is a tool that magnifies what is already in the heart. If a heart is generous and loving, wealth will turn it into a river of blessing to the world. But if a heart is secretly fearful, greedy, or self-centered, wealth will magnify those poisonous seeds until they become idols that demand the soul. The shock for the rich is this: your blessing is not a resting place. It is the highest level of spiritual scrutiny. It is the final exam to see if you truly worship me, or the gift I gave you. Just as I began to process this terrifying truth about wealth, a seed of self-righteousness started to form in my mind. Then, I thought, poverty is the way. The poor are safe. Instantly, Jesus stopped my thought and gave me the second vision. The scene changed dramatically. I saw a man in a small, dirty apartment. His clothes were worn, his fridge was nearly empty. He had nothing. But Jesus showed me the man's heart. And inside his heart, there was no humility or dependence on God. There was a dark, poisonous idol. It was the idol of envy. His heart was consumed by a gnawing bitterness toward his boss, a quiet hatred for his neighbor who had a better car, a deep resentment toward God for not giving him the life he felt he deserved. Jesus spoke again. This man had no money, but the love of money owned his soul completely. He did not covet my kingdom of righteousness, he coveted his neighbor's earthly kingdom. And that was the shock for the poor. You do not need to possess wealth to be condemned by it. The soul can be just as chained by the lack of money as by its excess. Envy for another's blessing is just the other side of the coin of greed. The two visions, the rich man in his cage of hoarded blessings and the poor man in his prison of poisonous envy, left me speechless. My entire, neatly organized theology of wealth and poverty had been completely demolished. I had fallen into the oldest trap of human religion, to judge by outward appearances. I had assumed the rich were either blessed or cursed, and the poor were either righteous or failures. Jesus, seeing the wreckage of my flawed understanding, then spoke the second great truth, a truth that directly confronts the spiritual pride that can fester in poverty. He said, the absence of wealth does not mean the presence of God. He explained that just as wealth is a test, poverty is a test. It is a fire that can forge two very different outcomes. For many, he said, the fire of poverty burns away pride, self-reliance, and the love of this world, forging a spirit of profound humility and a beautiful, desperate dependence on me. These are my blessed poor, the ones who inherit my kingdom. But for others, his voice grew somber, that same fire forges only bitterness. It hardens the heart into a blade of resentment. They blame me for their lack, they envy their neighbor for their abundance, and they allow their victimhood to become an idol, a justification for a heart that refuses to love or forgive. He showed me that many who had nothing on earth will arrive in eternity with nothing, because they never cultivated the only treasure that can be carried across the veil, a heart made rich in love, forgiveness, and trust in God, regardless of their circumstances. But Lord, I stammered, my mind racing, what about your own words? You said it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter heaven. I always thought that meant it was a near impossibility, a condemnation of wealth itself. A deep sadness entered Jesus' eyes, the sadness of a teacher whose most important lessons have been persistently misunderstood. Mankind, he said, has always focused on the impossibility of that image, when they should have been focused on the mechanics of it. It is not a riddle about impossibility, it is a practical lesson in unburdening. A camel, loaded down with the bags, the baggage, and the merchandise of this world, cannot physically pass through the small pedestrian gate that a needle's eye used to enter a city after the main gates are shut. To pass through, the camel must first be unburdened. Every bag must be taken off its back. It must kneel down, stripped of all it is carrying. He looked at me, the truth landing with the weight of eternity. The soul is the same. It cannot enter the narrow gate of my kingdom while it is loaded down with the attachments of this world. For the rich man, the baggage is his attachment to keeping his wealth. But for the poor man, the baggage is his attachment to desiring it. The spiritual requirement is identical for both. You must be willing to be unburdened. You must kneel at the gate, stripping yourself of all you hold dear in this world, whether it is your possessions or your envy, and rise on the other side carrying nothing but love. This new understanding was liberating. The test wasn't the amount of money, but the attachment to it. So what is the answer? I whispered. How do we live in this world without being attached to it? And then Jesus showed me the third and final vision. It was a vision of hope, a vision of the only economy that truly matters. The scene shifted from the darkness of my room to a realm of pure light. I saw souls arriving in eternity, and their appearance was not human, but was a form made of pure light. Some souls were dazzling, brighter than a star, radiating an almost painful brilliance. Other souls were dim, a faint, flickering glow in the vastness. Lord, what determines their light? I asked. And Jesus showed me. He replayed the life of one of the brightest souls. He had been a man of average means on earth, a schoolteacher. But I watched as he secretly paid for a struggling student's lunch every day for a year. I saw him give up his one free weekend a month to volunteer at a hospice, holding the hands of the dying. I saw him give away his extra coat to a homeless man on a cold day. These were not grand, public gestures. They were small, hidden, costly acts of love. Then Jesus showed me the divine transaction. Every time he gave away $1 with a pure heart, it was not lost. It was transmuted into eternal light and deposited into his soul. Every hour he sacrificed in hidden service was converted into a brighter radiance. In my Father's economy, Jesus declared, you do not keep what you save. You keep only what you give away. This is the treasure stored in heaven, where moth and rust do not destroy. It is not a stockpile of gold, it is a soul made heavy with the currency of love. The vision of the eternal economy faded, and Jesus brought all three revelations together to give me his final, stunning answer. He looked at me as a king, as a lawgiver, and as the ultimate judge, and he spoke the words that I believe will be the only question that matters when we stand before God. When a soul stands before my Father, he said, his voice resonating with the finality of all things, he does not ask, how much did you accumulate, nor does he ask, how much did you suffer? He looks at the soul, whether it belonged to a billionaire or a beggar, and he asks only one question concerning their resources. What did you do with the portion I gave you, to show your love for me and for your neighbor? This was it. The ultimate standard. The portion might be a vast fortune or 2 small coins. The portion might be a brilliant mind or a simple, kind heart. The amount was just the setting for the test. The only thing that mattered was the answer to that one, all-encompassing question. The presence of Jesus began to recede, leaving me on my knees in the darkness, my heart pounding, my soul completely recalibrated. I was no longer the man who had knelt down. I was no longer confused. I was terrified, humbled, and finally, liberated. I understood. The success I have been given is not a reward. It is a test. It is a powerful, dangerous magnifying glass. And now, I make a vow, before God and before all of you. I vow to seek every blessing in my life not as a cushion to rest on, but as a tool to be used, as a test to be passed. I renounce the golden cage of hoarding and the poisonous prison of envy. And now, the choice is yours. Look into your own heart. Are you the rich man, building a cage with the blessings you refuse to share? Are you the poor man, poisoning your soul with bitterness for what you do not have? Or will you, starting today, become an investor in the eternal economy? Will you begin converting your fleeting, earthly portion, whether it is large or small, into the everlasting, brilliant treasure of love? The question is not what you have. The question is, what are you doing with what you have been given?